Who said you could sit? I don't remember giving you permission. Mom's cooking for the family, and here you are, acting all high and mighty. A wife like you deserves to be kicked out, doesn't she? The one pressing in with this sleazy talk was Daniel, my husband. He kicked me hard in the back, and as I fell to the floor, he unleashed his merciless malice towards me. I had come to my in-laws' place for a family gathering, and being 7 months pregnant, I was taking breaks while helping my mother-in-law. Just as I had finished a task and went to another room to make a call on my phone while sitting down, Daniel, who had quietly followed me, kicked me.
Daniel, how could you do such a thing? What if something happened to the baby?
What am I gonna do? It's all your fault. It's common sense for a wife to stand when she's at her in-laws. Listen, don't sit without my permission. Now go help Mom. He said, clearly irritated as if the well-being of me and the baby was the least of his concerns. I had never heard of such common sense, but it seemed important to him. I had intended to have a proper discussion with him, but I realized talking to such a scumbag was a waste of time. At the same time, I told him, "Oh, so a wife can't sit without her husband's permission, huh? And did you get permission? To cheat?" The word cheat visibly changed his complexion more than if he'd seen fire. Did he think I didn't know? How much more did he plan to insult me? With rising anger, I resolved to fight back. Staring sharply at him like a knife, he glared back and retorted,
"What cheating? Did getting kicked make you lose your mind? Dealing with a fool like you makes me feel like a fool too. I'm stressed out from work every day. Don't make me more irritated. I'm going back to the living room, so hurry up to the kitchen," he said, about to head to the living room nonchalantly, but then he froze. Because Kyle, my brother-in-law and Daniel's brother, was standing behind him. Kyle looked furious, to say the least. Why Kyle was so angry was something Daniel should have known best. Yet he chose to play dumb. "What's up, Kyle? I've never seen such a scary face on you. I don't know why you're mad, but calm down." "Hey Daniel, I heard everything. The horrible things you were saying to Michelle."
"Horrible things? What are you talking about?" I didn't. As Daniel began to feign ignorance, I held up my smartphone right in front of him, displaying Kyle's name. Actually, I had been on a call with Kyle until that moment. Having the phone on speaker meant Kyle heard everything Daniel said. Realizing the situation instantly, Daniel started trembling like an abandoned puppy. Kyle then forcefully dragged him back to the living room. The family members, initially puzzled by Kyle's furious expression and Daniel's trembling, were about to be stirred up by my next action. I approached a high-end brand-dressed woman among the family members, made her stand up, and announced to everyone. Since Daniel said it's common sense for wives to stand, I had Sally stand as well. After all, she's Daniel's wife too. The previously lively family members suddenly fell silent, mulling over my words, then started whispering among themselves. Sweat poured down Daniel's forehead. A clear sign he hadn't expected me to go this far and that Sally, Kyle's wife, was indeed his mistress. Kyle's fury wasn't just because Daniel was bullying me. It was because he knew about Daniel's affair with Sally. For Daniel, being caught cheating with his brother's wife was the worst scenario, but he couldn't just admit it easily. So, he desperately pleaded with the family members.
"Everyone, wait. It's not like that. Michelle is just making things up. I'm too busy with work to have an affair. You all know how hard I work, right? So, please believe me."
Daniel looked earnestly at the family members. If one didn't know any better, they'd never think he was lying. But I knew. This guy lies as naturally as he breathes. He'll regret this for the rest of his life. Taking a deep breath, I began to expose Daniel's true nature to the unknowing family members. "Pretty bold of you to lie so blatantly. But can you still say that after seeing this?" I pulled out my smartphone, making sure the family could clearly see it. Displayed on the screen were Daniel and Sally leaning on him affectionately. To add insult to injury for the shocked relatives, the video began playing showing the two of them talking. Thanks, Daniel. It was delicious. As expected from a top-notch restaurant. What are we doing next? Actually, I've reserved a suite at the hotel. Let's enjoy ourselves there, just the two of us, with some drinks in our room. A suite at the hotel? People with money really live differently. Kyle could never do this. How exciting! After this, Daniel wrapped his arm around Sally's waist, and the two of them left the restaurant, closely bonded. I paused the video there, but Daniel and the relatives seemed frozen in time. Sweat dripped down Daniel's forehead. The relatives and in-laws cast suspicious glances at Daniel. It seemed I had managed to deal a significant blow to Daniel. What the hell, Michelle? Filming secretly? Taking it without permission could be a crime, you know? Faced with such conclusive evidence, Daniel had no choice but to admit to his affair. However, he tried to shift the blame onto me, refusing to admit his wrongdoing. But it was only a matter of time before his true colors were revealed. I hold the evidence. Let him struggle in vain. If Daniel is up for it, I'll take my time cornering him. To deliver the final blow to my unworthy husband, I explained how I came to know about the affair with a confident smile. Can we not shift the topic? Who's the one doing wrong here? I thought you were such a hard worker, glued to your computer even on weekends. But I was wrong. Your typing was all for your sister-in-law. Right in front of me, your wife, you'd exchange emails about how you can't wait to see each other again, or how much fun you had last time. You've got some nerve. Daniel's face showed panic as he struggled to find words. But none came out. Any excuse he could muster would only make things worse. He should just admit it and apologize, but Daniel was still looking for a way out. I glared at him and continued. Plus, you're so careless, leaving your computer on while you sleep. I never intended to snoop. It just caught my eye. And that's how I discovered the two of you were involved. I decided to gather concrete evidence and followed you, which led me to record that video. Hearing my story, both Daniel and Sally turned an amusing shade of pale. Next to them, Kyle's face was twisted in rage, his whole body shaking with anger. Daniel faltered for a moment in the face of Kyle's fury but quickly started to argue back. What I do is none of your business, Kyle. Acting all high and mighty when you're just a failed candidate. Realizing he was at a disadvantage, Daniel decided to brazenly defend his actions. Daniel was considered a candidate for the next CEO of the company, which fueled his dedication to his work. Although it was never openly discussed, Daniel looked down on Kyle, who had been removed from the succession and was working at a smaller company. In front of me, Daniel would boast about how much better he was than Kyle, saying things like, Kyle suits being a nobody in a small company. Cornered, Daniel's true feelings towards Kyle spilled out. Sally joined in, suddenly finding her voice after looking so pale. With a vulgar laugh and a shrill, annoying voice, she started defending Daniel. Exactly. Daniel's right. He's the next CEO. And Kyle was removed from consideration and ended up in some pathetic company with a measly salary. That tiny salary can't even afford a meal at a fancy restaurant. I married him thinking he'd become CEO, but what a letdown. Sally sat back on the sofa, crossing her legs. Wearing high-end clothes, but with a character as worthless as trash. I have no intention of continuing this pathetic marriage. I'm gonna divorce Kyle and marry Daniel. The rightful first lady of the company is me. Michelle, you should think the same. Enough is enough. The voice roaring in anger belonged to my father-in-law. Until now, he had been silently observing the situation, but he could no longer stand to listen. Even Daniel seemed surprised, his smug smile replaced by a fearful expression. You two are greatly mistaken. The next CEO is Kyle. There was never any intention of entrusting the company to Daniel. Daniel was at a loss for words, shocked by his father's unexpected announcement. It's no surprise. His confidence in being the next CEO has always driven Daniel, pushing him to confront his work head-on. Yes, it's true he had an affair, but it's also true he diligently worked overtime and on weekends, tackling his job with vigor. His enthusiasm led him to a dangerous rationale. Because he worked so hard, he believed anything he did, even having an affair, was permissible. Discovering he wasn't going to be the next CEO must have been a world-shattering shock for Daniel. Unable to accept this, Daniel desperately questioned his father.
Why, Dad? I was supposed to be the next CEO, wasn't I? You said so yourself, and I've been working my tail off, doing overtime, working weekends. What's your complaint with me? Kyle's been at a small company. You're really gonna leave the company to him?
My father-in-law must have shocked him deeply. Tears even appeared in Daniel's eyes.
I intended to leave the company to both you and Kyle. I had Kyle work at a different company to learn about management. I thought it'd be good for him to experience working somewhere else first. And I wanted you, Daniel, to stay and learn about our company. I believed that together, our company would be in safe hands. But it seems I overestimated you, Daniel. You don't have what it takes to be CEO. Betraying and hurting people so easily. No one will follow someone like that. It's disgraceful that you turned out to be such a lowlife. Why? I've worked harder than Kyle. I manage more people, hold a higher position, and even earn a much better salary. I'm more suited to be CEO than he is. Enough, you foolish. You think you can lead people? You can't even take care of your own family. You can't cherish your employees if you can't cherish your closest family. I can't entrust the presidency to someone like you. The company will go to Kyle, and you will work under him.
Daniel resisted like a child, stomping his feet.
No! I don't want to work under Kyle. I'm the one who should be leading.
If you insist on that. All right.
Really? That's great. I knew I was.
Hope sparkled in Daniel's eyes. However, the words his father released next were not what Daniel expected.
If you can't work under Kyle, then it can't be helped. You're fired. We can't employ someone who won't follow the next CEO. If you hate working under Kyle that much, find yourself another job. What?
Daniel's face crumpled as if he was about to cry. After blinking several times, tears finally began to fall, and he started sobbing. Being ousted as the next CEO and then getting fired seemed to be the ultimate blow for Daniel. He crumpled to the floor and sat down. Then tried to cling to his father's legs, begging for forgiveness.
Please forgive me, Dad. I was wrong.
Finally, Daniel uttered words of apology. But it was too late. Without acknowledging his fault, he lied effortlessly and defiantly. He even repeated hurtful remarks towards me and Kyle. My father-in-law seemed to feel the same way. With a shake of his head, he kicked off Daniel's clinging arms.
It's too late. And aren't you apologizing to the wrong person? The first person you should be apologizing to is Michelle.
Trembling under his father's yelling, Daniel looked at me. Our eyes met, and he prostrated himself on the ground, begging for forgiveness.
Michelle, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I'll change my ways, please forgive me.
After repeating lies, excuses, and defiance, Daniel finally apologized to me. I couldn't feel ready to forgive him just for this. But his sincere apology lifted a weight off my chest that had been there all this time. The tense expressions of my in-laws seemed to soften a bit too.
If you had just admitted and apologized from the start. Now, you need to make amends to Michelle and take responsibility. That's right. What you did to Michelle cannot be forgiven. You hurt her, and instead of apologizing immediately, you became defensive and hurt her further. You must sincerely apologize until she can forgive you. I know. I'm really sorry, Dad, Mom.
Daniel apologized again, and the atmosphere finally eased a bit. However, one person remained unaffected. Huh? This is laughable.
What is this, a tearjerker from an old TV drama?
Sally looked down on Daniel with disdain. Now that he was no longer going to be the next CEO, he seemed worthless to her.
I can't deal with this farce. So, Daniel is not the next CEO or anything, just unemployed now? Then he's of no use to me anymore. Kyle is the next CEO, right? I'll continue to be Kyle's wife as before.
Sally said this while fiddling with the necklace in her open chest area.
What do you mean as before? Enough already. Shouldn't you be apologizing too?
Kyle exploded in anger at Sally, who had an affair with his brother and refused to apologize. And Kyle had another reason to be furious. Sally hesitated for a moment but then decided to feign ignorance.
What are you talking about?
She tried to appear calm, but her crossed legs shook nervously, which I didn't miss.
You've got another man besides Daniel, haven't you? Stop making accusations. Do you have any proof?
Her legs began to shake more noticeably. A sign that we were getting closer to the truth.
Then I'd like to know, who bought those expensive brand rings and necklaces? My salary could never cover them. That was... Daniel. Daniel bought them for me, right, Daniel?
Caught off guard, Daniel quickly shook his head.
No, not me. Sally always wanted high-end stuff, but I couldn't afford to give her everything. I was barely managing to cover restaurant and hotel expenses.
Daniel, just having been forgiven, did not want to get involved in the marital squabble of his brother and sister-in-law. He vigorously shook his head, denying any involvement.
If you're going to lie about it, then I guess I have to say it. You had another affair partner sponsor those expensive brands, right? Like Daniel said, he couldn't provide enough for you, right? Your affairs are all about money. You're terrible.
Kyle and I had been investigating Daniel's affair together and discovered that Sally was also seeing another man.
It's appalling that you have two affair partners. I have no intention of reconciling with such a wife.
Kyle's shouting filled the room. The relatives who had been watching were furious as well. The atmosphere felt like Sally could be attacked at any moment, but she seemed indifferent, having resigned herself to her fate.
That's right. Kyle can't afford brand names. Daniel did buy me some, but it wasn't enough. I want to be adorned with luxury brands that everyone envies. I deserve that much. It's Kyle's fault for not being able to buy me proper things.
Sally's defiance was even more outrageous than Daniel's. It was clear that she was only interested in brands and money.
And to not notice that I was seeing two other men, how foolish can you be? It's your fault for being deceived, Kyle.
Her audacious claim that the betrayed is at fault left everyone dumbfounded.
I've had enough of dealing with brothers like you. Daniel, you're unemployed now, a poor man with no value. What? You said you loved me, was that all a lie? Of course, it was a lie. I was with you for the high-class restaurants and luxury brands. An unemployed man like you is useless to me. Goodbye.
With that parting shot, Sally left the home, clutching her expensive designer bag. The door slammed shut behind her. We were left in stunned silence, trying desperately to comprehend the situation. Witnessing Sally's actions firsthand, everyone was too shocked and angry to process it. Daniel seemed particularly devastated by Sally's betrayal.
She had another man. Betrayed me. Unforgivable.
He gritted his teeth in anger and despair, glaring at the door Sally had exited through.
That's karma for you. You betrayed me and Kyle. You even betrayed your parents. And now, you've been betrayed in turn.
Having felt the pain of betrayal firsthand, perhaps Daniel now understood the hurt he caused. He looked down at the floor, lost for words.
Michelle, I'm truly sorry. I bear some responsibility for what Sally did. I failed to see her true nature and let her run wild. I know apologies aren't enough, but please let me say it. No matter how long it takes, I'll drag her here in front of Michelle if I have to.
Kyle apologized deeply, and I was overwhelmed.
Kyle, please look at me. What Sally did is unforgivable, and I have no intention of forgiving her. But you did nothing wrong. You've been deceived and hurt too. Besides, I never want to see that unpleasant woman again. I plan to forget about Sally, so I hope you can forget her too and start a new life.
Kyle showed gratitude for my words. Of course, no one blamed Kyle. Everyone who witnessed the whole situation understood that Kyle was a victim too. Seeing him apologize even though it wasn't his fault made me feel even more that Kyle truly deserved to be the next CEO. It's in times of pressure that a person's true character is revealed. Someone who lies or becomes defiant like Daniel could never fit the role of CEO. Everyone here felt the same way. My father-in-law comforted Kyle by patting him on the shoulder. And my mother-in-law also gently rubbed his back. Thus, the tumultuous family gathering quietly came to an end. Afterward, I divorced Daniel, claiming child support for the unborn child. Despite hastily abandoning Daniel, Sally seemed to still cling to Kyle, the next CEO, and stubbornly sought reconciliation. This was because her other affair partner, who was supposed to be her financial support, turned out to be married. The man had a wife and children and had been deceiving Sally. When the affair was about to be exposed to his family, he quickly abandoned Sally. I knew beforehand that the man had been deceiving Sally, but it was not my place to tell her. As expected, Sally was on a fast track to self-destruction. Left alone, Sally, who Kyle refused to acknowledge, pleaded with me to mediate between them. However, I simply returned her words to her, saying it was her fault for being deceived. Faced with the consequences of her own actions, Sally was left speechless. Through this ordeal, I discovered the truth. Hurting others without thought only leads to hurting oneself in the end. Treating others with care, just as one would cherish oneself, is what leads to true happiness. Now, I am enveloped in happiness, thanks to my baby who was born safely. The presence of my child, who looks at me with clear eyes, is irreplaceable. I look forward to walking down the path of a happy life together with my child.